In this video, we're going to walk you through how you can turn your recording into polished content using the Riverside editor. It's built to be fast and powerful and give you the freedom and flexibility to create content in the way that you want, all while still being very simple to use. The Riverside editor is built for conversations and talking head videos, whether you're creating podcasts, interviews, tutorial videos like this one, marketing videos, etc. It helps you turn your conversation into high quality and long form and short form content really quickly and easily. And you also have AI to help you to speed things up along the way, which gets you from recording to published content a lot faster. So let's get started and take a look and see how it works. First, you'll need a recording to work with, either one you record on Riverside directly or one you upload separately to edit later if you've recorded it in a different place. So to start editing, you have a couple of options. If you've finished a recording and you've uploaded to Riverside, created the project and everything, you can just simply click on that project and it'll take you to the recordings, and then you'll find the edit button right here, which will take you directly to the editor with the recording already opened and ready to work on. You can also go to the edit page directly from your dashboard, so if you select the edit button from here, this will start a brand new project fresh. So it'll ask you if you want to upload a file directly if you have one already recorded. You can go to the recording studio and do a full session from there, or you can select a pre-recorded file or edit that you already have on hand and start a new project from there. So the way we're going to do this right now, because I already have a recording done, I'm going to go to my projects, go into my recording, and go ahead and select the edit button from my main recording so that we can start fresh. And when the editor opens, you'll see your video, tracks, and transcripts are already loaded, so you can start editing right away. So let's take a quick look around at all the things that we see here. First thing to take note of is your video canvas, and this is going to show us what we're looking at any given time. And below that is the timeline where you can split your clips, move sections, and arrange your content however you want. It's basically where the bulk of the work is happening, and later you'll see how you can use the expanded tracks feature and use multi-track editing to edit your recording with full flexibility and freedom. On this side over here, we have the transcript, which lets you edit your recording simply by editing the text, just like a document. And in this toolbar, you'll find the tools for media, branding, design and layouts, AI editing tools, and more. And to the left of that is your navigation menu or your project menu, which lets you move between different edits and media assets freely. And on the right side, you'll find Co-Creator, the AI agent that helps you edit and create clips just by chatting. And we'll go ahead and close that out. And then up here, you'll be able to find where you can get direct chat support, the help center, and you can also send direct feedback about the editor straight to our product team and provide any other feedback you would like to provide. Now, there are multiple ways to edit your content on Riverside. You can use the text-based editing, meaning editing in the transcript like we just discussed, and you can edit directly on the timeline. Or you can chat with Co-Creator for a chat-based editing experience. No matter which method you choose, the AI tools are available throughout the whole editing process, so they're there to help you whenever you need to work a little bit faster or enhance your content in some sort of way. And you can also offload most of the editing process on some of the AI tools if you'd like. You can just use the automatically generated assets like clips or full episodes and more. And they're created directly from your recordings. Now let's actually dive into how we use all of these editing tools and the multiple different types of ways you can actually edit. Now the first thing we want to do before we fully start editing is just make sure we have as much real estate as possible. So let's go ahead and close out this sidebar here of the project files. And now let's just explore how we can use the transcript to edit our piece. So first of all, we started recording before we actually did our little presentation here. So let's just say we go down to the part where we're actually starting to record, which is when we say, welcome to our annual recording of the replacement cast. So what I can do is I can just highlight all of our words here at the beginning, and then I can just go ahead and press delete to remove that from the timeline. Now you'll notice that when I delete it, it removes it from the timeline. So if I press play, it'll start the actual recording from here. But at any given point, we can go back and restore anything that we need to, and it'll add it right back into the timeline, which is really nice. And then if we made a change that we accidentally did, like that, maybe I didn't want to restore it, I can just do Control Z or Command Z to undo, or I can select undo from here, and that'll undo the change that we just made. And this is also a good way to pick out short clips or segments that you want to use for other purposes or different clips. For example, if we wanted to just highlight this whole section here, I can just highlight that and then bring this down and select keep only this, and that's going to take away everything else in the timeline, and now we just have that little segmented spot to use for an individual clip. So there are a number of different ways you can utilize the transcript to edit your content, but you can also just edit directly on the timeline. Now, when it comes to the timeline, I'm just going to resize this window here to make this easier to see. But before you start editing in the timeline, it's important to know that you can either edit with your tracks collapsed like so, or you can expand them by separating them like this. And then this way, you can work on each track individually and cut out different sounds or different things that happen per track. Now, when you edit with the tracks collapsed, everything stays in sync as it's originally recorded, but when you use the separate tracks feature and you start moving things around, it is possible to move things out of sync like so. So it's just something to be mindful of as you're recording and you're editing, but it's also an advantage that you can have in case somebody was talking over another. So let's say we zoom in on this part by holding Command on a Mac or Control on Windows, and you can scroll in to the timeline like so, and it scrolls in wherever your mouse is at. So we can go ahead and scroll on this spot. And let's just say we want to remove this little talking bit here on the timeline. In this separate tracks feature, we can go ahead and split this. And the way that we split clips, there's two ways to do it. You can either select split from up here, and that'll make the cut like so. Or you can use a keyboard shortcut. So I'll go ahead and select this spot here, and I can press S, which will also do the same thing. And I have a couple options with this. I can either delete it from the timeline, which will also delete the video in conjunction with it as well, or I can just reduce the volume on it so that it's not heard at all, but the video remains there. So I can play this back and you won't hear him. Yeah. But it still shows the video. So the separate tracks feature is great for more refined edits, but for overall editing and cutting your content together, the collapse track is going to be a much simpler and seamless workflow. Now, similar to the transcript editing, if there's a section that we want to cut out of our timeline, we can just click and drag an in and out point on our tracks here. So let's just go ahead and select this point here. You'll see it highlighted in our transcript. We can go ahead and press delete. And just like when we removed it in the transcript, it still remains in there if we want to restore it later, but it also removes it from the timeline. And this is also a good time to point out trimming. So let's say your selection wasn't exactly as precise as you wanted to. You can go into where these edit points are. And if you hover your mouse over either side of the edit point, you can either click and drag this left side to pull everything that's in front of it back or forward, or you can go into the right side and click and drag and move everything that's behind it backwards or forwards, just so you can refine that edit exactly where you want it. So another thing you can do is copy and paste clips, both in the transcript and in your timeline. The way to do it in the timeline is, let's say we want to copy this section right here. We can just go ahead and highlight it with our in and out points. Go ahead and copy it using the same shortcut. And then we can say, let's say if we wanted to paste it right here, let's go ahead and split that. And then we can go ahead and paste it right in between that section. Or if we want to just copy it and paste it at the end, we can avoid cutting it right there and then just paste it and put it right at the end of our timeline if we want to make a reel of stuff that we want to be able to use later. And similarly with the transcript, if we highlight in our transcript, you'll see that we can copy this or cut it, and then go ahead and scroll up to where we want to paste it. Let's say we put it right here. We can go ahead and double click and it'll paste it right in between that section. The great thing about this whole workflow is that the timeline and transcript are fully connected. So if I wanted to search for something in my transcript so I can find it in the timeline, let's say I'm looking for when we were talking about saturation, it's a really easy way for me to go and find it, and it highlights those points in my timeline as well, so that I can scroll out and see every instance that we talked about that topic. Now, when we look at our video canvas, obviously the position in which we're sitting in doesn't really look like it's framed correctly, and I might want to switch the side that I'm on. So the good news is with our canvas, with our layouts, we can fully customize them however we want. One way to do this is by manually clicking and dragging them from one side to another, and the canvas will automatically snap them in place on the edges. But since we just need to swap places, we can click and drag the center dot here over to the other camera, and it'll swap their places automatically. automatically. And then if I need to move them in frame without moving the whole image, I can select them and then go to the crop tab, and then I can just click and drag to position both of us right where we need to be in the center of the frame, and that looks a lot better. Now let's say I wanted to apply this change to every single time this layout was used. I could select similar scenes, and after I select similar scenes, I can make whatever edits I want to in the layout, and that'll apply to other scenes that have the same exact layout. Now speaking of scenes, what actually is a scene? Well, in short, they're used to change how your video tracks appear in the canvas, and this is using the layouts like we just saw. So anytime you add a new scene in the timeline, this is the way you change from one layout to another. And in a minute, I'm going to show you how Smart Layout streamlines this whole entire process. Now that we understand the essential functionality of the timeline, let's take a look at some of the AI tools that Riverside includes, because they help fine-tune the edits much faster and they take out a lot of that tedious work. So let's go over to our AI tools tab here, and let's take a look at what each of these tools do. So first here we have the remove pauses, which takes out the gaps in between people speaking, so you can easily take out all the blank spaces or gaps in the timeline to keep the video moving and keep a steady pace. You can adjust how long a pause has to be before it gets taken out. And then if you have additional B-roll or screen sharing in your timeline, it'll ignore these pauses by default unless you check this box here to apply to screen shares and media. Next is remove filler words, and this will take out all the ums and uhs that you have throughout the timeline, and then you can go into this dropdown and choose whether you want those fillers to be either just muted, completely cut from the timeline, or a combination of the two depending on the flow. And the checkbox here applies the same as remove pauses, just for filler words. And then we have Magic Audio. Now, Magic Audio is really good for fixing problems with audio tracks, especially for those that don't have good microphones. So it'll remove background noise, it'll reduce reverb and echo, and it does some mixing to get your audio to sound a little bit more like a studio recording. And then you can adjust how much you want to blend the Magic Audio mix to the original track here. So as an example, if you only need a little bit of polish, you can bring the percentage much lower, and that'll keep some of the original audio while mixing it with Magic Audio. And then Smart Mute will auto mute a track when they're not explicitly talking, in case there's any random noise, breath sounds, or anything else that could interrupt who's speaking. Now, here's where we talk about smart layouts. Now, you saw a moment ago how scenes and layouts in the timeline worked, and smart layouts will go through the whole timeline and switch scenes based on who's talking, and it'll do that automatically. And this is potentially one of the biggest time savers of the whole editor, especially for really long form content. And it also gives us quite a bit of control over how and where it cuts. So if we look at our options here, the style allows us to choose what type of layout we're switching between, but we're going to stick with smart for this example because that will adapt the best between the types of layouts. And then the frequency determines how often the scenes will change. So usually with long form content, it's best to keep this lower so that it doesn't cut too frequently. And then for short form content, you can actually set it higher because that might be more desirable if you need something more fast paced. Then the cutaway will give you options to set which alternate view you want to use for an additional angle or layout. And then the video frame will set if you want the camera to fill the whole entire screen or if you want to fit the whole cameras in the frame. And lastly, we have eye contact, and this will attempt to fix your eyes on the camera. So if you're doing a talking head video similar to this one, but you're looking at a script below your webcam as an example, eye contact can keep your eyes fixed on the camera instead of your screen. And this is more of a niche use case and will definitely take a lot more processing time for longer form content. And for podcast setups like this one, it's probably not very beneficial because it could feel very unnatural. But it does have its practical use cases for other talking head content such as corporate videos or training videos. And then after that, if you need to fine tune some things on the individual track level a little bit more, you can select the tracks button and go into any one of your individuals or tracks and then increase or decrease volume, change the Magic Audio or EQ or any other color adjustments. And then you can go to your branding tab if you want to add some logos or other assets. So let's just say we put in our replacement cast logo in here. So we can go ahead and select that. And then we can put it in a certain position. So let's say we want it to be in the bottom right. We can go ahead and back here, and if there's a certain color palette that we want to use, we can add different multiple colors in here. So we can add like a certain blue or a certain whatever, and you can customize them by hex code. And you can go ahead and fine tune any of these other things to fine tune how the branding looks. And that way you can just apply this to all of your content. So after you've customized the tools and branding to your liking, you can still go in and make more fine tune adjustments to the edit. And we'll see what you can do with scenes first. So if I zoom into this section here, right now we have just one person on the screen talking at one time. And then we have this part where both of us are on the screen at the same time, but maybe I just want him on there instead of both of us. So I can select this part and then go to layout and then make sure it's set to solo speaker. And that way it just stays on only him as the whole thing is going through. And then another thing we can do with our scenes is we can also similarly trim. So I don't have to show myself until I start talking, which is over in this area. So if I just click and drag this trim over here, it'll keep him on the screen until I start talking as well.
Type. Yep. It's great.
I've had it, and it's funny because I did that for a couple. And in addition, you'll notice that as we hover over these scenes, you'll see this transition button pop up. And this is a way we can actually just transition from one thing to another in a variety of different ways. The most common way is usually a fade. We'll call this a crossfade here, and you can change the duration of how long you want this to be. We can just go ahead and type this in manually to make it half a second. And then go ahead and add that transition there. So now if we play this back.
Now you can just type. It's great.
It'll transition as a crossfade. And speaking of scenes and layouts, we can also change our design of the layouts as well. If we go up to this design tab, we have corner radius, spacing, and background where we can add some corner radius to the corners of each of our individual tracks here, as well as some spacing if we wanted to put some gaps in between as well. And then a background that goes behind the images so that it can show something other than just black. And that background can be in either an image or a color as well. So if I select an image like so, you can see it puts it behind our video so that we don't have just a plain black background. So let's take a look at how to add some media and overlays into our timeline, either from the stock media that we already have or by generating it. So we're going to start with our audio because I want to add some music in here to outro this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my ready-made collections, and let's just go to business and tech. And maybe I want to use one of these outro pieces. I'm going to go ahead and choose the high long for this one. So I'll just go ahead and hit plus to add it to the timeline, and then it adds it like so. And so if we play it back right here, it kind of comes in pretty strong. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. And it might be a little bit too jarring. So maybe I want to fade that in a little bit so I can go ahead and have it take a couple seconds to fade in. And then maybe move it back a little bit so it gradually comes in as I start the outro. So let's try that and maybe reduce the volume a little bit because it is a little bit strong. So let's just go about half volume for now. So let's go ahead and play that back. I don't know how to close things out. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Okay, so that sounds a little bit better. And then maybe at the end, I want to add something here to have a bit of like an off screen at the end. So we can go ahead and split this right here. And then we can drag this up to the next layer above. Go ahead and make sure we fix that accordingly. And then I'm just going to drag this over a little bit and drag this like so. And then we're just going to bring this one to full volume and then also have it take a second to fade in. And then we'll have this one take a second to fade out. And then now we can transition them like this. Bye. So now we have a natural music up. Now there's a lot of things we could potentially add to this outro screen, but just as an example, let's go ahead to our stock library. Now there's a number of things we can do in here. We can generate our own videos if there's not a specific video that we want inside of our library. But in this case, let's just go ahead and add this video to our timeline here. I'll just go ahead and click on that and add it to the end here. I'm just going to drag it right to where this part ends. And now whenever the piece ends, it transitions right over to an end screen like so. And we can modify this in the same way that we do our regular layouts. We can go in and add border radius. We can add animations if we wanted to slide in from the side and just take a full second to do that. And then that way we can have it overlay on top of us. And then we can have it fill the screen as well. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Bye. And then we get a nice smooth animation for the outro. And then lastly, we can utilize Co-Creator to help us along the way. If there's something that we wanted to do that's a little bit tedious and it might take us a little while to do, we can tell Co-Creator to do just that. And as an example, tell it to take out all the times we talked about bad editing experiences, and it'll do a lot of that specific bulky work. Now, Co-Creator can also help create assets from your recording as well. So for example, let's say we wanted to make a clip from a specific moment. Like in this instance, I can ask it to create a clip from when we were talking about saturation and how to best utilize it. So I can submit that prompt and it'll run through the edit and generate a clip based on that information. And it can also generate things like thumbnails or social posts. And if you wanted to control how those assets are created, you can go up to this Personalize tab here and add specific instructions like using your tone of voice or specific design settings. And if you prefer to edit everything yourself, you can still use Co-Creator as a guide to ask it how to do something in the editor, and it'll point you in the right direction. The key thing is that you're always in control. You can let AI create everything for you, or you can edit everything manually, or even combine the two options. And you can use AI to speed up things where you want while still shaping the final edit. And there are also times you might just want to try out the AI just to see what it does and see if it's beneficial, like this clip right here. So speaking of AI, and now that you understand the editing process a little bit better, there's another thing that Riverside does that's inside of the Made For You tab inside of your project. And what this Made For You tab will do is right after you record or upload your footage, it'll actually automatically generate things like a full episode draft, short form clips from your best recording moments. It will generate show notes, blog posts, and Instagram captions, and more. And you can find all of that inside of this tab right here. They're fully ready to share, but also fully editable if you want to make any sort of changes. Plus, you can go to the Personalize section in each one of them and customize how you want those to appear or how you want them to be generated. And the nice thing is you can access any of that project-related made-for-you generated content from the editor itself. So if you go to your project window right here, you'll see that our magic hooks, magic segments, and magic clips are all right here, and you can switch to them at any point, and it'll pull it up in the editor, and you can switch back and forth between the clip and what you were just working on seamlessly straight from the editor. If you're ready to finalize the video, you can go ahead up here to click export, and here you can choose the essential settings you need, like the video quality, whether or not you want a watermark, if you want the audio levels normalized, which means you want them leveled out to a specific spot, and remove background noise if you don't have Magic Audio on already. And then you can go ahead and hit export video, and that'll send it to the exports page in your project. So we can go to that exports page here, and once that's done and exported, you can hit share and send it to anybody that you like, even if they don't have a Riverside account, and they can provide feedback on it. And you can also send it to a social media platform directly, depending on its format. Now, if you do need different versions for those different platforms, you can go back into the edit like so and change the aspect ratio here to fit whatever those platform needs are. And then once you do that, let's say we make it a vertical and adjust your layouts accordingly like so. And then you can go ahead and export it again and then upload it to those other platforms as needed. Now, if you're creating a podcast, Riverside also offers hosting, which is included in all paid plans at no extra cost, and it allows you to easily distribute your podcast to platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and several more. You'll also get built-in analytics and a free podcast website to help you grow your audience and to connect better with them. You can also post directly to social media from Riverside in your content planner like so. And that's the Riverside Editor. It's designed to help you turn conversations into polished content very quickly, with powerful AI when you want it and full creative control when you need it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to see what you create.